Live from Callaloo Studios in New York City, you are listening to Let's Take It Offline with your host, Kishana Palmer.
Hey, Fab Crew. You're listening to Let's Take This Offline, the podcast for everyday leaders. Part inspiration, part sit down, let's have a conversation. Here's where you'll find the real deal about living well and leading well. I'm Kishana Palmer, your host and resident leadership whiz. And now, let's take this offline. All right, Fab Crew. So in the studio today, I am so excited to introduce the man, the myth, the legend, my daddy, Linval Palmer. Now, if you're friends with him, and sometimes even if you're not, he goes by Bernard because, as he would tell you, people can't even remember his first name, but I think it's actually quite special. And everything that I know in the real world, not all this book smart stuff, I learned it from my daddy. And so I could not think of anybody that I wanted to have kick off our podcast than my dad. So, Daddy, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Oh, my gosh.
Pleasure.
Daddy, when I told you that I was going to be doing a podcast, what was your first thought that came to mind?
Well, first of all, let's make a joke about this. I had no idea what a podcast was. I still really don't. So I'm actually feeling my way as I go through right now. But I must say that I'm actually very pleased and happy to see what it's turned out to be.
Now, Dad, I hear you have an accent. Where are you from?
Accent, I believe that's from my cooking. It's the accent before cooking. I'm actually from Jamaica, parish of Clarendon.
All the Jamaicans in the house. Yachty, Jamaica, massive. Listen, y'all, don't let the lack of accent fool you. I'm an actual full-on Jamaican woman, okay? Right, Dad?
Without a doubt. 100%.
100%. So, Dad, a lot of people ask me how I got my name, Kishana. It's a pretty unique name. Although, Dad, just this morning, my friend Angela called me and told me that she had somebody who made a friend request whose name was Kishana, spelled with one SH. And then we went on this huge rabbit hole search down the Googles and found it on Facebook and other things. There's lots of Kishanas now. Most of them are younger than me, I just want to say. None spelled like mine. But how did you come up with Kishana? Because Mom said that you named me.
Interesting. That's very interesting. When your mom was pregnant, we were going over names. And I remember vaguely that she had come up with the name Ketania. I was, and your mother was actually in love with Sean Connery.
Yeah.
Because I believe 007 at the time was one of the big movies out. So she told me initially that she was going to have a boy. Now, my intention at the time was to actually name the boy Sean. Now,
after Sean Connery.
After Sean Connery, without a doubt.
But Dad, you could have named me Sean anyway.
No, not a girl. I don't believe. Listen, that would be actually reminding me of a story of a boy named Sue.
You knew a boy named Sue?
No, actually it was a country western song about a boy named Sue. So if I name you Sean, I think we'd be actually going down that path again, which I wasn't trying to do.
Not in them days.
Not in them days at all. So we ended up on a compromise because, like I said, she had this name Ketania. I don't remember where she got that from, to be honest with you. But we actually took both names from the Ketania and I put Sean with it. And somehow we came up with Kishana. So, but the spelling with the double S inside, it basically was because of Sean Connery. So S-H-A-U-N was going to be there, but we turned it into S-H-A-N-A, actually. That's how that came about.
And I had a whole 9 letters. Dad, I don't know if you remember this, but over the course of my childhood, I tried to change the spelling of my name like a million different ways.
Really?
Yeah, I added a W. I added a U. I took out the S-H one time. Like, I just kept doing things to my name. And then finally, I just settled on just the way you gave it to me. That was it.
Well, I got news for you. The memory is not exactly what it used to be, but I don't really remember that you actually had a problem with it or that you actually tried to change it.
I wasn't telling y'all that.
Obviously not. Obviously not. But listen, what it came down to in the end, it was a very unique name for a very unique personality. And in the end, if I had it to do 100 times over, I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't change it for the world. The spelling, the unusual spelling, the person that is turned out to actually fit, I wouldn't change it for $1,000,000.
Ooh, listen to that. Look, my daddy talking nice to me. I love it. Listen, y'all, I just want you to know that before I was even born, my daddy knew that I was going to be special. Is that not right, Dad?
Without a doubt. Your firstborn, you had to be special, without a doubt.
So, Dad, over the course of my entire life growing up, you turned what felt like everything into a learning opportunity. It was always an opportunity to get a little lesson in, whether we were hanging out at Burger King or we were walking in the mall or something. It was a lesson you wanted to teach me. And one of the things that I remember you said to me from when I was probably in single digits real early in life was that my only competition was myself.
That is so true. You know, having been one of 21 siblings.
Wait a minute. Stop the presses. Friends, I just want you to understand that I have, in my first line of lineage, 20 aunts and uncles. Continue, Dad.
Yes, like I was saying, I've been one of 21, survival and always learning was something that we had to always do. My father passed away when I was quite young, actually. I think I was about 7, but in that time frame, we had like about, I would say 5 or 6 siblings that were actually younger than me. Remember, I said I was 7. My mom raised us, and one of the things she always taught us was that every opportunity is a learning experience and it's a time to teach. So she was one of those ladies that you would never ask a question and it would ever be answered with a yes or a no. It was always, if you ask a question, I'm going to give you a question and you will end up answering your own question. So
Mama was the original therapist,
without
is what you're
a doubt,
saying.
Without a doubt. This is all something passed down from my mom, and it was something that I actually enjoyed doing because I believe there's an old saying that's when opportunity knocks, open the door. There's always a chance to teach, and you should never allow that opportunity to go. So again, this is from my mom. I pass it down, and I remember Kishana having, and even her daughter now, they'll ask me a question. I actually see them take a sigh like, oh boy.
Dad, I'm right here. I do sigh. Every time I'm like, so Dad, let me talk to you about, so and you're like, this reminds me of a story. And I'm like, here we go again. But it's always like really, really good. So I feel like telling me from very early on that I'm my only competition. Like, what was the point of you like driving that home? Because you started that with me like, I might have been in first grade. I mean, like it was really, really, really young.
See, my mom always tell me, and that's again, everything you notice, I will refer to my own mom. She was one of those that always believed that we are our worst enemy or we are our best friend, one way or the other. The idea of you being your only competition is actually telling you that no one can make you fail or no one can make you succeed but you. You have control of your own. You have control of your own things, and therefore the decision that you make or not make is what's gonna either make you or break you.
That's right.
So that's basically was the whole thing behind it. Anything in life that you want to do, and if you're determined enough to do it and you persevere, you normally can get it done. Mostly, you remember the whole saying that I'm always telling you that a winner never quits and a quitter never wins.
That's right. And I think that those were some early leadership lessons for me, because one of the things, Dad, that you didn't even realize probably that you were teaching me by telling me that I am my only competition was to really like keep my eye on the prize and to focus on what I'm doing. And I remember that so clearly because you would always ask me when I got my report card. And y'all, I just want to tell y'all this quick thing, okay? Like, my daddy is no joke. I definitely was am and will always be the apple of his eye, along with my sister. But I will say that my birthday is in May, y'all, okay? And report cards in New York City, where I grew up, come in June. And it was always a fantastical surprise to me that my parents would be like, let's see how your report card goes, even though my report cards were always A's. And so the only question my dad would ask me before I got my report card, before he looked at it, was, did you do your best? And if the answer was yes, Dad, you were always satisfied. And if the answer was no, no matter what the grade was, y'all, and if the answer was no, you'd be like, why not? What are we going to do differently next time? What were you doing? What was your thought behind it, Dad, your approach to just having me focus, one, on making sure that I am my only competition, and also reinforcing the notion to myself of did I do my best?
See, the worst beaten or flogging, as we would call it in the English language, flogging that you can actually get is one that you actually deliver to yourself.
Woo.
As the great Robert Nesta Marley says, you can run, you're running and you're running and you're running away, but you cannot run from yourself. Now, if you take anything in life that you as a challenge, and if you did not do your best in taking care of a business, when the results come back that you did not like or did not feel what you're satisfied with, you're going to be actually, as we say, flogging yourself continuously because you know you did not do your best and you could have done better. It's always going to be this, what if I had done this? If I had done this, this could have been, if I had done. So my focus was always to make sure that you can look yourself in the mirror and say to yourself, you know something, I did the best I can, and my best maybe needs to work. I need to work a little harder, but I am satisfied that I did the best I can. And that was always, if you can look in the mirror and be satisfied with the person looking back at you, you're usually going to be all right.
Woo! And it's so interesting, Dad, that, that was such a foundational message for me, and just a part of just like me just being at the front of everything. Because you remember me, Dad, growing up, when was I not class president or this or that or the one running things? And you would come into the building when it was time for the performance or the award, and you just had this look of like, and like, this is what it is. Like, why? What was your approach to that? Like, why were you kind of like, even now you're like, so of course you're successful. Like that's what it is.
You know something, if you ever put your hand on anything in life and didn't succeed at it, I'd actually be surprised, to be honest with you.
Woo.
So I was never surprised at the marks that you got or anything that you achieve. One of my biggest, believe it or not, disappointments, well, it's not, maybe I call it disappointment, but I leave it at that, is that I never was able to, at the time, because of different circumstances, get you into sport. I would have been absolutely astonished if you had gone into sport at what you could have done with it, because there was nothing that you put your hand on that you didn't excel at. And that was basically nothing that you accomplished actually surprised me. Maybe maybe I was just cocky or confident or sure of myself.
Yes. You were like, I put this kid out in the world. I already know it's about to be good. And it's so interesting that you always said it to me, like the one thing you regretted was not putting me in sports growing up. But the reality is, it brings to mind a conversation you and I had a couple years after you retired. And I asked you, have you ever done hard work since you've been in this country? And I was shocked by your response. Daddy, tell the folk what you told me, because I was like, what?
As best as I remember, I actually said no.
Yep. That's astounding, by the way, because like many West Indians, you've had many jobs. 3 jobs, 4 jobs.
Actually, I had more than that. I remember one of my sisters once asking me if I ever got a time to sleep, and they would joke that I was doing what we call making the donuts. I was always up making the donuts at whatever time. But that never really bothered me. My complete focus was to make sure that the family had whatever they needed. It was all about the family. Hard work, to me, I have never done in this country. Really. In growing up, as I said earlier on, my father passed away early, and my mom, it was dependent on my mom and the rest of my siblings to actually take care of what we needed to do in order to survive. Now, as with a lot of countries, and Jamaica being one of them, my mom did actually sell some things in the marketplace and so forth. So we actually survive by depending on what the land provided for us. There were a typical morning would be waking up at 4:30
Whew.
in the morning. My mom had a song that she would sing. It was called "Come to Jesus."
Yes, that was your wake up
It
song.
was a wake up song. But my mom had also had also another thing. If you didn't come to Jesus, the belt would be coming to you.
Hey, is there one?
So you would
Is there one?
So you would wake up. So you'd wake up no matter what. But what I'm getting around to basically is that we get up at 4:30 and we'd head to the fields because each of us had a particular thing that we were required to do. We had a few cows, so you had to go to the cows. You would actually separate the mother cow from the calf in the night so you can have milk when you go in the morning. You then release the calf to actually have the mother let the milk down, and then you move that poor calf away and then do your own milking. That was just one of the examples. We're talking about 4:30, 5 o'clock, and the field that we work in was approximately maybe 2 miles from the house. That was just the beginning of your day.
That's crazy.
We would be in the field till maybe about 8:15. Then we'd leave that field, me and my brothers mostly. We'd leave that field after we complete, head to the house, get whatever was actually made for breakfast, which was not much many times, but it was enough to sustain you. And then our school was a mile exactly from my house. So we'd run to school. That was early training. That was about 9. And for the rest of the time that I was in Jamaica, I came here when I was 17. We did whatever was necessary to survive growing up in the farm and in the country. So when I came to this country and I had to do work, I never considered work. It was long hours, but it wasn't work. So no. To your question again, that's why I said I never worked a hard day in this country.
And I just want y'all to know, my dad is being modest. And so my dad has done everything from be a bellman, elevator operator, telephone operator, an orderly. He had 2 jobs in 2 nursing homes at the exact same time, working 4 jobs in the 4 nursing homes. And his rotating shift, if I remember this when I was little, Dad, was you did a 7 to 3. And then a few days a week, you did a 3 to 11. And then a few days a week, you did a 11 to 7. And you were off 1 half day and then 1 day each week, rotating. And on the day off, you spent your time with me.
Without a doubt.
And that's why I had a love for shopping and burgers. Because, y'all, anybody who knows me knows my shoe collection is wicked. Daddy, it's your fault.
Well, listen. I had limited amount of time and limited amount of resources.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I have always believed in, and that's something that my mom instilled in me also, is that your children really doesn't value you based on what you can give them, but
That's
based
true.
on the time that you can actually spend with them. So my thing was about spending as much time with you as I could. And Burger King at the time was always running specials. So even though I didn't have enough money in my pocket, I was always able to go to Burger King.
Get this 2 for 1.
And guess what? You do the 2 for 1 at Burger King and walk the mall. It kills a lot of time. We spend a lot of time in the park.
Together, a lot of time in the park.
We even had, you remember we actually had a hug for the...
We had a hug. Okay, so y'all, I'm going to do this for y'all because we're taping this, Dad, too, doing a little video so folks will see. So if you're listening to this right now, so this hug, my dad, from as long as I can remember, worked at night. And then when you went to corrections, Dad, you worked overnight, which is a choice, right? So you could be available to us in the daytime. And so we would do this hug where I would lift up my right hand, and then I would lift up my left hand. I would take my right hand and put it over my left shoulder. I would put my left hand over my right shoulder. I would lean in, and then I would squeeze. And that was our hug every single day. Oh my gosh, Dad, I'm going to cry.
Without a doubt. Listen, when you can't get to spend the amount of time that you would actually want to spend with your children, it is very, very important that you have some kind of a connection with that child or the children, that they understand that though you might not be exactly there, that you are absolutely there even though you're not in person.
Absolutely. And I think that, so if anybody is thinking about like my work ethic, Dad, and like, cause folks are always like, Kashana is a beast. Like, where does she get it from? You're always on the go. Ladies and gentlemen, my dad, like just having the example for all my parents actually. So, of what it means to like work hard and what it means to like really focus on your family and what it means to establish legacy, what it means to take care of yourself. Cause Dad, for a retired sir, you in good shape. You over there as founders that we've posted you looking like a snack with a six pack, which is why, Dad, I just want to tell you also, it's probably the reason why I'm still single. I just want you to know. Okay. Because you a man of a certain age taking good care of yourself. Some of these gentlemen are out here in the streets closer to my age in the 40s and so they're not really taking good care of themselves. Now, Dad, tell me why you think being able to be a leader also means taking care of your body and your mind.
Well, leadership, mind, body, taking care of those. Well, first of all, you got to remember this. The mind is the most powerful thing that you do have. If your mind is not right, then nothing else is going to be right.
Say that again, Dad, for the people in the back.
The mind is one of the most powerful things that you have. If the mind is not right, nothing else is going to be right. A lot of people hesitate to actually do exercise because it makes them tired. But guess what? By exercising, the body has lots of muscles. You have to use them. You know the old saying, you either use it
or you lose it.
Now, I keep busy both mentally and physically. Why? I believe in the old adage, grass never grows on busy street. Leadership, let me go to leadership now. And how do I actually feel about leadership and what exactly is leadership? Leadership entails to me a lot of different things. To be a good leader, you have to first set examples. Leadership does not mean that you are able to tell people exactly what to do, when to do, boss them around. Leadership to me, is being able to have people follow you freely, willfully, because of the example that you actually set. When I was working, I was actually a union representative for 19 years in one particular place. And I went on challenge, first of all. I had a director of nursing that did not speak to me for 6 months because though we got along beautifully, there were certain principles that I would not back down from. We had a particular incident that even though I knew she had completed the end that she was required to do, because there were paperwork that was needed to be signed and she did not have them signed, I could not go along with her. So I had to take the side of the person that I believed to be not really truthful, but based on principles, the requirement was that she had to have paperwork signed.
Yeah.
And she didn't. So I actually had to go against her. It's principle. Leadership is about principle. It's about discipline. It's about having people follow you willfully, freely, without having to force them.
I love that. And I feel like for me, one of my values that continues to echo because of just my early home training is that integrity, right? Like, what do you do when no one's looking? I remember you used to always say, like, character is the thing that you build when no one is looking. And so being able to be disciplined in the way that you approach your life and the way you approach your work. You can't do it 100% of the time, all the time, Dad. And we're going to talk about that too. But we know that you have to make a decision about being a leader long before you ever get the leadership spot. So I think about your time at corrections and you've told me, I could have done a captain's test. I could have done this and that, but you chose your family and you chose to be president to lead in other ways, but you still had an impact. I mean, there's folks who were in corrections with you, both who are correction officers and also who were inmates, et cetera, who still stop you on the street. You still get invited to all the stuff. Why do you think that is, Dad?
Well, on that vein, first of all, I had a saying. I told a few of my correction officer friends that I believe that if there was ever a riot in my building, I would either be one of the first officers to be eliminated or one of the first officers to be protected. Now, one of the reasons was that is that I did not compromise my integrity. When it comes to the inmates and the officers knew exactly where I stood on certain things, no matter how friendly I was with an inmate, and there were a lot of them that I was friendly with because guess what? They grew up in my same neighborhood. They were my kids. They were the kids that I played ball with. There were many times I went to the park and I was there playing with ball with the same kids that were incarcerated recently. The kids that stopped me on the street to tell me to show off their family to me because I sat down and listened to them. But they also knew that if something jumped off or happened where I needed to make a choice, they knew where I was. I was blue. Bottom line. And that does not mean that I'm going to take advantage of a situation, but it means you know where I am. Integrity is something that I would never compromise on. And because of that, a lot of people gravitate to me. Before I left my job, approximately 50% of the new officers that came in were actually sent to my posts on the night shifts that I work to be trained. See, you finish the academy and you think you know the job, but when you come to the job, you actually learn the job.
Wait, but you know, Dad, hold on a second before you go on. Hold that thought. A lot of young professionals, particularly now in this generation, are leaving school with really great credentials, with just a real keen instinct, but they confuse expertise with experience. And so what you just said right there is that's the clinch. You might have went to the lab. You might have done some experiments, but things got to blow up a few times before you really get the formula. So I love that. So you had all these folks who would come who had to be trained by you before you left. Go ahead.
Without a doubt. You see, I had officers that became captain. I chose not to take the captain's test because, as you explained, as you said before, family came first. What happened is, to make it short, is that the test that I would have qualified me came when I was too far along on the job, and it would have necessitated me actually going back on what we call the wheel, which is different shifts at different time and so forth, and I didn't want to do that. So there are officers that actually came in many years after I did, and they became captains, so they became my supervisors. So when they would come to half of them were actually learning the job, because you're on the job for 5 years and you make a captain, you really don't know the jobs in most cases. So if a new captain comes to my post and is doing something that I believe or I know to be not exactly according to, what it's supposed to be, what I would do is I say, Cap, no matter how much I know as a Cap, respectfully, but maybe you would want to try it this way or this way, because if that captain sort of, even if they don't say anything, but they actually just make sure they do it the way I was suggesting or not do it the way they were doing it before, that's a captain I have no problem working with further on. But if that captain seems to want to show me that they are the captain, I'm not saying anything. I'll let you swim or sink on your own. So too many people do. When I got on the job, I knew nothing about the job. There's an old joke that many times is the inmates on the job that teaches you the job.
Woo.
Because most time the inmates on the job know the job better than you. They are there all their life, and all they do is study you. Study what you're supposed to do, what you're not supposed to do, and so forth. So, you learn the job from them, but you must taper that with the rules and regulations and what you were taught in the academy. So when new officers come in, you got to also teach them your experience along with what they know also.
Dad, let me tell you how you just broke it down, and people don't even realize that. So one of the things that we talk about on this podcast are two things. One, intergenerational team. So you just broke down how to finesse different levels of experience and age. So we're going to come back to that in future episodes, y'all. So make sure that y'all stay tuned for that. But another thing you broke down is something that I talk about a lot when it comes to being a Black professional in the workplace and in a position of leadership. And I've said on a couple of different occasions that if you think about actors and you think about British actors who play Americans, that they learn American accents like down to the ground, right? Like think of my favorite Idris. Ugh, jeez. He can come in here and be an American rapper in a minute because he has been studying our accents, studying our craft. You never really see it in the reverse. You don't see that with American actors, how they can really lock it in on accents from other places, right? And so I compared that to being a Black professional in the workplace. I've been studying white folk my whole life. the whole script, the game, how to do things, how to move, how to be. And so if it wasn't for your early leadership examples on how to maneuver within myself before it was pressure tested, and then my ongoing experience and time up at bat and practice on how to navigate white spaces, then I wouldn't understand how to maneuver professionally because I wasn't studying the game. So when you talked about inmates in this particular example, because a lot of Black and brown folk really do feel like inmates in prison at their professional environments, that's what we're going to be covering a lot of in this podcast, that folks have been studying a long time and could teach you a thing or two or three or four. Some of us are tired of teaching. But the bottom line is that we learn a lot about the systems we're in, even if we are not in a position of power. So I don't even know if you realize you just broke that whole thing down to the ground. Just simple and easy.
It's interesting because I never saw it really quite that way. You know, when I do things or when I talk about things, I talk about it based on just feel. You know, multitasking. You sell yourself short in many ways because
Me?
Yes, you do. Because I believe that your ability to multitask is on par with none. You understand me? And one of the things that you're very good at and is something that I watch you do is adaptability. You talk about learning somebody else's craft, studying somebody else and their ways and so like that's called adaptability in my book. You see, too many of us are too, maybe for lack of a better word, too full of ourselves or too arrogant to actually realize that it is necessary to study what they, you know, there's an old saying, let me cut it off.
Hey.
It is always, you should keep your friends close, but you should always keep your enemies closer.
Come on now.
Why do you keep your enemies closer? Because you know what your enemies are doing at all times if they're closest to you. That's why you keep your friends close, but your enemies closer. Always study the opposition because I listen to different channels and different opinions of people. One of the things that I pride myself in is the ability to actually contribute to almost anything that anybody can talk about.
Me too.
All subjects.
That's where I know I get it from you. Like, if you're not versed in a room on a topic, what are you doing here? Like, I need you. And Dad, I just want to say, stick a pin in that for a second. Reason number 1,265 why I might still be single. Because I just want you to know that there are not a lot of gentlemen folks, at least that I run into, that can talk about politics, religion, liquor, sports, what the world is spinning on and the access. Eric Jerome Dickey, turn around and talk about dictionary words. Let's talk about cooking. Let's talk about something like just have the level of versatility in language and in their lexicon and in their conversation topics. And so it makes it very, very challenging to find somebody who you're simpatico with. And so it doesn't. What ends up happening, you talk about adaptability, is that you adapt to what you understand and you know, and so it makes you a powerhouse in one area and very alone in another.
It is unfortunate. It is.
Y'all like how I keep blaming my daddy for everything. It's your fault, Dad.
Yeah.
And he's not. He's like, yeah, you right.
Well, you know something. I will not apologize in any way at all, or nor would I ever apologize for actually making or actually instilling in my kids, my daughters in particularly, that they are as strong as anybody out there and can do anything they want, and that they should not settle for second best in any ways. I believe that if you end up settling for less than what you think you are worth, somewhere along the line, you're going to end up looking in the mirror and going like, I don't like what I'm seeing over there. And the bottom line is that, like I said earlier in this conversation, is that you need to be, until you can look in the mirror and be very pleased with who's looking back at you, something is always going to be amiss.
Absolutely. Dad, look, we could talk all day. And so, as a matter of fact, I think as a special treat for our listeners, we're going to bring you back each episode just for a little nugget. Because I feel like you just dropped about 2,402 different nuggets that we're going to want to explore on Let's Take This Offline. And, being able to have the conversation after the conversation, the one where somebody has to pull you to the side and go, let me talk to you for a minute. You just had a couple of, come over here, let me talk to you for a second. And so I know folks are going to want to hear leadership lessons from my Jamaican daddy. And so I'm so excited that you just said, yes, you were like, I don't even know what I'm getting into, but here I am. Let me put these headphones on and just to chat with us. And we cannot wait to have you back.
My pleasure. I believe it or not, like you said a minute ago, you're right. I had no idea what I'm getting into. I still don't have any idea what I'm getting into. But you know something? Life is a journey.
Yes.
Life is a journey, and one should never be afraid to start a journey. My mom always said, and I go back to my mom all the time, if you never start it, you can never finish it.
Hey, I think that's it. I think that's how we end that one. All right, y'all. We are going to be back for more episodes on Let's Take This Offline, the podcast for everyday leaders, where we talk about the topics and we have the conversations that are the meetings after the meetings. I want to thank Linval Palmer, my daddy extraordinaire, for joining me on this podcast episode. Please make sure that you subscribe, you download, you share it with your friends. On our next episode, we'll be talking about why your leadership might be making you sick. And you don't want to miss that. So make sure you hit the subscribe button, and I'll be talking to you real soon. Love what you heard? Found a little nugget, but need more? Head on over to kishcamp.com, my masterclass for managers who are ready to do things differently at work and grow their skills so they can lead with confidence. Don't forget to subscribe, download, and leave a comment so we can keep the conversation going.
What happened in the meeting after the meeting?
The meeting after the meeting, Dad?
I know.
What happened in the meeting after the meeting? What happened in the meeting after the meeting? What happened in the meeting?
What happened at the meeting after the meeting?
We talk about it all.
No, change it up. What happened at the meeting today?
We'll talk about it all. We'll chat about it.
All right.
We'll chat about it.
Tell me you're ready.
I'm keeping all this, by the way. Go ahead.
You should. It's hysterical. Go ahead.